I sent to me this morning.
I have to do that, did you?
Good evening. Welcome to the October 24th Lebanon City Council meeting. I'm Morris Jones. I'm the president of the council leading the meeting tonight. First order of business, pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Mike Kincaid.
Present.
Keith Campbell.
Here.
Morris Jones.
Here.
Dick Robertson.
Here.
John Copeland.
Here.
Brent Wheat.
Present.
Sierra Messenger is absent this evening. Thank you.
Next on the agenda would be the approval of the minutes of October the 11th.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. We'll move to the old business. Ordinance 2022-28, appropriations and tax rates, second reading.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Be it ordained / resolved by the City of Lebanon that for the expenses of the Lebanon Civil City for the year ending December 31st, 2023, the sums herein specified are hereby appropriated and set out apart from several funds herein named for the purposes specified, subject to the laws that govern the same. This is for Lebanon Civil City. The property tax levies and the property tax rates are specified and included herein. And I will just go fund by fund. So Casino Riverboat is $93,000. General Fund is $13,579,723. Debt Service, $141,747. Bond number 2, $211,891. Bond number 3, $369,878. Fire pension, $312,604. Police pension, $222,390. Local road and street, $298,822. Motor vehicle highway, $1,373,119. Park and recreation, $1,622,940. Park bond, $380,031. CCI, $31,000. CCD, which is cumulative capital development, is $100,000. Stormwater bond, $501,832. Sanitation, $1,109,000. There are 3 funds set apart that are not reviewed by DLGF. Food and beverage is $500,000. Public safety lit for fire and police is $3,704,419. And the American Rescue Plan for this year, or it'll be next year, sorry, is $1,820,383. That total is $26,372,779.
Comments from the council?
No, sir.
Any public comments? I hear none. I entertain a motion for the ordinance 2022-28.
I move we approve ordinance 2022-28.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's been approved. Next item will be ordinance 2022-29, fixing the salaries of certain city Lebanon employees. Second reading.
Okay, be it ordained by the council, the city of Lebanon, 2/3 of its members being present and concurring therein. The following is the base pay for positions listed, and I'm doing this by department. Section 3, full-time employees of the City of Lebanon receive longevity pay at the rate of $75 per each year of service. Longevity pay begins after the first full year of service and does not include the current year of service when calculating the amount for each employee. The Public Safety Longevity Schedule is .0075 of a first-class firefighter/patrolman salaries and shall be capped at 20 years of service. All first-class firefighter patrolmen with 5 years of service or less will remain on the civilian longevity schedule until their 6th year of service. That if a current employee transfers to a vacated position, the amount of the salary would be no more than the amount listed in said ordinance, plus the longevity of the employee transferring to said vacancy. The salaries are as follows, beginning January 1st, 2023. Motor Vehicle Department, $541,428. Parks Department, $884,481. These are based on 35 to 40 hours per week, which is a little bit different than the other police and fire departments. Planning Department is $495,611. The Historic Commission is $6,000. Police Department is $2,710,815. Fire Department is $2,074,584. Clerk Treasurer's Office, $124,865. The Mayor's Office, $50,758. Community Development, $73,397. Engineering, $83,225. Lit Public Safety for the Fire Department is $1,128,899. Lit Public Safety for Police is $764,215. The annual salaries of the following board members shall be, we have 2 Board of Works members that we pay, so it's 75 times 24. They each get $1,800 a year for $3,600. The annual salaries of the following board members shall be City Plan Commission, 8 members at $100 a meeting, so that's $9,600. Board of Zoning Appeals, there's 5 members at $100 a meeting, it's $6,000 a year. Park Board, 6 members, $50 a meeting for $3,600. Plan Commission, Zoning, and Park Board members are only compensated for regularly scheduled meetings that they attend. And that's it for regular salaries.
I have a question.
Yep.
I thought we talked about raising the park board's fee.
Mayor said no. I mean, you guys didn't talk about it, you
No,
just talked
I
about it.
know, but I did already talk to him about it.
You talked to the mayor?
I spoke to him first before I spoke to you, but he didn't say different. I just thought it was.
I asked him because I had your note, and
Yeah.
he told me to leave it as is, so I did.
Okay.
Any other comments from council?
No, sir.
Comments from public? I hear none. Entertain a motion for ordinance 2022-29.
I'll make a motion, we pass ordinance 2022-29 of the fixing the salaries for the city of Lebanon.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's been approved.
Thank you.
Next order of business, second reading of ordinance 2022-30, fixing the salaries of elected officials for the city of Lebanon.
Okay, this is the last one. Be it ordained by the Common Council of the City of Lebanon, 2/3 of its members being present and concurring therein, maximum salaries of the following elected officials of the City of Lebanon beginning January 1st, 2023 are as follows. Mayor, $57,978. Clerk Treasurer, $61,934. Common Council, the President gets $11,000, and then there are 6 other members that get $10,000 each, and that's $71,000. Section 3, in addition to the funds paid by the civil city as set out in Section 2, the following elected and appointed officers are to be paid from funds of the municipal utilities as follows. The mayor, $30,090, clerk treasurer, $17,204, and deputy clerk treasurer, $26,952. This will also take effect January 1st, 2023.
Any comments from council?
No, sir.
Comments from the public? I hear none. I'll entertain a motion for ordinance 2022-30.
I make a motion that we approve ordinance 2022-30.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's been approved. The next item on the agenda, the chair would entertain a motion to table due to some procedural things that's happened.
I'll make a motion, we table ordinance 22-31 to the next meeting.
Okay,
I'll second it.
they've been approved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 So we'll move that to the next. Council, have any other old business before we move to new?
No, sir.
Under new business, resolution 2022-26, adoption of the bicycle and pedestrian master plan update. Derek Warren.
Good evening, Council. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on how we got to where we are today, and then I will turn it over to Brandon with Kimley Horn, and he will go over some of the details. Kimley Horn is the firm that put together the plan for us. So a brief history. This is our second bicycle and pedestrian master plan. The first one was adopted in 2015. In 2014, the committee, which we call the Active Living Committee, no problem, formed, and we gathered and started coming up with ideas, started to come up with ideas on the creation of the first plan. The first plan was put together by Butler, Fairman, and Seifert. It has certainly served us well, but we have kind of outgrown that plan, and that is why we entered into an agreement to create a new plan. So some things that have happened since the adoption of the first plan in 2015. I'll start with the trail side of things. So the East Street from Memorial Park to Abner Longley, connecting the two parks, was a primary goal out of our first plan. So East Street was identified to do that. East Street was identified as a bicycle boulevard. A bicycle boulevard is an on-street facility. It's controlled with one-way streets and some bump outs and curbs and intersections. But as we have started to develop trails, we have certainly found that, and I think most communities have found that users of trails are more comfortable with off-street trails. So we started to shift our focus and go that route instead of doing some of the on-street facilities that were in our first master plan. So some of the signs that you've seen out there from our first master plan was share the road signs that you see in some of the corridors. And in that first plan, those corridors were identified as potential future trail corridors. But again, it started as an educational kind of component as we have moved through the years. Because back in 2014, 2015, we had a total of owned city trails at 0. So we've really come a long way in the years since. So since then, we currently own 10 miles of developed trail, which I think is fantastic. The East Street Trail came out of the master plan. The East Street Trail is on the west side of Northeast Street that connects Memorial Park down to Washington Street, the library essentially. And obviously the Big Four Trail from Sam Ralston Road to Hendricks Drive. Coming through town, came out of the redevelopment of the downtown square. And with that, from the square, we have now gone from where we left off down to Hendricks Drive, as I mentioned, as part of the Next Level Trails grant that we are wrapping up. In fact, I have a walkthrough with DNR tomorrow, so that'll be exciting. We'll have a ribbon cutting ceremony for that down the road here in a few weeks. And then the second part of that Next Level Trails grant that we received will repave from Center Township, where we originally took ownership back in 2015, all the way up to Sarum Plant Road. So that stretch, about 4.5 miles, will be completely repaved and be a nice, beautiful surface. The surface that's there now has been down since like 2006. It was a slag surface, which is a byproduct from a steel mill. Sets up very similar to like a concrete, but it falls apart relatively quickly. So that's where we're at now, and that's why we're repaving that. So at the end of this next year, 2023, we will be connected, actually the Big Four will be connected all the way from Colfax to the fairgrounds. And then when Waterford fires up, they will take it from the fairgrounds and connect it just shy of Whitestown. We have one property owner who's not willing to sell yet, so at some point that the connectivity between us and Whitestown will happen whenever landowners are ready to sell and move on. So exciting stuff, and again, that's all happened in like the last 6 years. So some really big steps that we've taken, and a big credit to you all for funding some of these projects. Sidewalks, we've done a ton of sidewalk work. And as I mentioned, this is bicycle and pedestrian master plan. So it's not just about trails, it's also about, it's about connectivity, whether that happens with trails or sidewalks. Alternate means of connectivity. So in the sidewalk side of things, we've done a lot of work. Our initial focus out of the group that we formed in 2014 was to fill in the gaps of the sidewalks. So some of the gaps we have closed since that time: Elizaville Road, that was a big one. Elizaville Road all the way basically from the Gulfside subdivision, which had a sidewalk, down to Grant Street, where you turn in to go to the administration building. There was a huge hurdle in that project. About midway through, there's a old farmhouse that has a garage that's underneath in the basement. So we had to build a retaining wall to get past that, and then install the sidewalk. Mentioning Grant Street, the Grant Street section there where the middle school, superintendent's office, tennis courts had no sidewalk. So we put a sidewalk and curb in right there. That was a big connection. Lafayette Avenue, huge connection. There was never a sidewalk on Lafayette Avenue until we put that sidewalk in, all the way from Hoy up to Riley Road. And we have future plans to take that up to Riley Road, up to Witt Road, and currently with the bridge being rebuilt on Witt Road, it will accommodate sidewalk and trail. Witt Road will eventually have sidewalk and trail on both sides as well, all the way up to 250. Camp Street, little bitty section that nobody probably ever even gave a thought to. Camp Street from Lebanon Street to the children's home. There was never any sidewalk there, so we made that connection. Walnut Street and Hamilton Street in the southeast quadrant of town. We did a path off of East Street that is now ADA accessible, and a lot of this stuff is ADA accessibility drives a lot of this stuff. So these older sections of town like the Hamilton Street, Walnut Street area, there were sidewalks with trip hazards 2 inches big. In the ADA world, you get a 1/4 inch of a threshold there. Anything over a 1/4 inch is out of compliance. So we needed our goal with the Hamilton Street and Walnut Street project was to start to connect East Street, which has always been identified, as I mentioned, as a major corridor for alternate means of transportation. Get them over to the Hot Pond, get them over to the Conservation Club, get them into Abner Longley. That will happen via Noble Street as we start to continue to move down the path here. North Park Street leading from Washington Street up to Central. William Street, we fixed all the trip hazards there, put ADA crossings in. Trip hazards throughout many of the subdivisions, Euland Countryside being one, Chadwick being another. Gulfside, in fact, had some that we've done. Glendale Drive in Edgewood had a disaster of a stretch of sidewalk. Just about where William Street tees into it, on the east side of the road as you move north, there was I couldn't even tell you how many soft maples planted in the tree lawn, the space in between the curb and the sidewalk, and it just destroyed the sidewalk. It looked like not using the term lightly, but it looked like a war zone when as our contractors are moving through there. There was roots everywhere, way up into people's yards. We got rid of all the roots and fixed the sidewalk. So now that's all accessible through Edgewood. Edgewood was another subdivision that we fixed most of the trip hazards. Syracuse Drive, that has been our project for the last 2 years. So in 2021, Lebanon Utilities replaced the water main on Syracuse Drive, and in that plan, they only replaced, unfortunately, one side of the sidewalk. So when we caught wind of that, we decided, okay, we're going to drop back in and complement the other side. So we had to split it up into 2 years because of funding, but Syracuse Drive now has new sidewalk on both sides, new sidewalk and driveway approaches all the way around to Garfield, and then it moves north and loops back around. So that was all done. That alone, most people probably don't even notice unless you live in that subdivision. But that was roughly a $375,000 project just for sidewalk, and most cases, one-car driveway approaches that were in the right-of-way. So it's expensive. All this is really expensive. So to give you an idea of what we have spent since 2017, when we started getting money into the planning department for sidewalk replacement, 2017 through 2022, we have spent $1.1 million in sidewalk installation and repair. So at the time we adopted the first plan, we had 100 miles of existing sidewalk. $1.1 million sounds like a lot of money. But in that $1.1 million, we have done less than 3 miles of sidewalk. So we have a lot to go, and it'll never stop. And the stuff we're fixing today will need to be fixed 50 years down the road. So this is a never-ending adventure. One of the great things that came out of our initial plan was what we called the Sidewalk Cost Share Program. It's had a couple different versions along the way, but for the most part, over the last several years, it's been a 50-50 program. So the cost share program itself is a way for community members to property owners to jump to the front of the line as far as sidewalk replacement goes. Anytime I get a phone call, hey, my sidewalk's in disrepair, can the city fix it? Well, yes, we eventually will, but then I give them the 100-mile speech, how much everything has cost, and I said, well, we'll get to it, but you might not own the property, and the person that buys the property after you might not even own the property. But we do have this great program if you want to participate with us. And so it's a way for people that are conscious about the way their property looks, somebody who's getting ready to sell their property, or again, somebody who simply just wants to jump to the front of the line. They can partner with the city. So the cost share, over this span since we've had it available, the city has kicked in $170,000 for the program, which doubles since it's a 50-50 program. So community members have also kicked in $170,000. So in roughly the 5 years that it's been around, there's been $340,000 worth of sidewalks replaced as part of that program. So, and we have spent every dime of that money that we initially start out with in our budget every single year we've had it. So, and we've upped it a couple times over the years. So that is definitely a program that is worth having around. So that's just, sorry, I probably talked too long there, but that's just a brief description of what's come out of our original plan. So you've all seen the new plan. I'm going to introduce Brandon with Kimley Horn now. He will kind of walk you through some of the highlights of that plan, and if you have questions for either myself or him, we're happy to answer those.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Derek, and thank you, Council, for allowing me to be here this evening to kind of give you a brief update on what we went through on the master plan process. Just kind of look at that at a high level. Again, my name is Brandon Schrag. I'm with Kimley Horn. We're landscape architects, planners, engineers, offices in Indianapolis here. So plan update. So what did we go through, and what was the process that we took? What we like to do is obviously study previous plans The plan that Eric mentioned was something that we had poured through. We'd also looked at the 2021 Business Park pedestrian and bicycle study that was completed and adopted by council in 2021. So looking at previous plans, thoroughfare plans, other type of, your comprehensive plan, all those sort of things, getting that layer of the onion peeled back, if you will. And then we look at the physical conditions. So the existing corridors that you all have, looking at some of the right-of-way widths of those larger thoroughfares and corridors. Typically, these bicycle pedestrian facilities do work their way into street, right-of-ways. So looking at that is pretty important. And then looking at, the traffic flow and the pavement conditions, parking inventory. So all that's done at a pretty high level. It's not like we get into engineering plans or anything like that in this particular master planning process, but understanding, does it pass the test, and would this facility physically fit in that corridor, for example? So that's what we look at with the right-of-way. Your existing branding that you'd put together a while back for trails, so we look at that, understand how that can work its way into the process as well. Again, making sure we're using the good work that's already been completed. And then the other kind of another layer of the onion is the public engagement. So talking with the public and understanding, what do you want to see in your neighborhood, and what do you want to see in these corridors that you use every day? So we had a couple stakeholder meetings, and we had spread these out from the time we had started the plan, kind of mid-2021. And then, had another follow-up one after we had done quite a bit of work. So we kind of had a draft plan review then for the stakeholder meeting in March. We did have a public open house held at Clues there, as you can see in the pictures, and had a lot of good turnout. A lot of folks filtered in, gave us their feedback. We looked at some maps, just being able for somebody to kind of mark up a map and say, no, this is exactly where I'm talking about. You need a sidewalk connection right here. Very valuable information. We can't canvass the entire city within the scope of the project, so that really helps us out. Also did a couple of citywide public surveys. So those are mainly online, and folks could give us their opinion. And I think we got a lot of good public feedback and stakeholder feedback in this process. So some of the recommendations, we have a couple of different graphics here up on the screen. On the left-hand side is your typical sidewalk setup within a street corridor. You've got, sometimes you're going to have that on the curb line, sometimes you're going to have that separation. That separation is preferred, so that's kind of what the plan kind of calls out. Sometimes that sidewalk grows into a side path or a trail, much like East Street. And then the new, DNR Next Level Trail projects that Derek was just talking about, having that kind of grow into that multi-use facility there within the corridor, so you can have biking and pedestrian side by side within that corridor on that facility. On street, on the left here, again, as Derek mentioned, that was a big thing about the previous plan. Trying to get back to more of that separated facility, but at the same time, sometimes this is what works. This is what fits. You don't have enough right-of-way, or it's just a really low-traffic street that just makes sense. Maybe there doesn't need to be a trail, constructed on the side when you can just stripe the lanes through a pretty, low-traffic neighborhood, for example. So that's another facility and recommendation that works its way into the plan. A typical sort of greenway trail, if you will, so something totally separate from vehicular use or vehicular sharing a right-of-way with vehicular use, for example. So that's what's on the right. And then again, we give some standards on what that constructed facility might look like as well, with the mode strip on the side and the widths of the paths, for example. So all that, in kind of a high-level overview here, it works its way into a plan. So a lot of different colors and lines on this map, for example, and that is your city within the current boundaries. And there's a couple of different use areas outlined there that at the time were current, for example. So on the north side of your city and everything going on there, how do we connect to that location? and then Waterford down to the lower right, for example. So kind of calling out some of those areas too. We also note the destinations within the city, so parks, schools, other just sort of attractions that people would typically ride their bike to, or would like to, for example. And then we go into the trailheads that are proposed and exist today as well. So a lot of different colors and everything there, but essentially the facilities and where they would land within the city, the proposed facilities. One of the goals of the master plan was to make sure we had a bike facility within a quarter mile of everybody within the city. So what we did is took those routes, those proposed routes, and then kind of bubbled outside of that a quarter mile. And everything shaded in red is something that would be covered, an area that would be covered by bicycle facility being, proposed and in the ground if this master plan were realized in the future. So that was a goal of the administration, and that is something that we accomplished in a big way for the plan. So kind of getting into that implementation side of things, one of the things we like to do with our plans is create a priority list. It's a priority. It's a list. It's an ideal situation. It's a far-reaching master plan, if you will. Do these projects all happen in this order over time? Probably not. But at the same time, this is how we would, like to see the plan roll out, for example. So working with the city administration and stakeholders, kind of went through the segments of the master plan. So we broke that master plan into segments basically and prioritized those 1 through 15. And then also within our scope of services, we had 2 implementation projects that we were asked to study in a little bit more detail. So we'll get into those in a minute, but that's Sam Ralston Trailhead is on the screen as well, for example. What we do in that case for these priority segments, and it's a chapter of the master plan that you have, is we kind of create a cut sheet, if you will, for each project. So the project has a blurb, a narrative blurb, how many miles or linear feet we're covering with this facility, some existing condition photos, a map, that sort of thing. So that can be easily kind of taken, and it could be the beginnings of a grant application, for example. So that's one of the reasons we like to provide that as part of this process. Talked about there's 2 sort of projects that we went into a little higher level of detail on. So Anderson Lane on the north side of your city, looking at that from, on both sides of 39, for example, and then going up a little bit on Elm as well. So the other part of this project is how do we connect to the YMCA? That was something that we heard throughout public and stakeholder engagement. So it's only about 300 feet or so from Anderson Lane up to the YMCA. It's kind of a tricky sort of path, if you will, but we felt strongly, and the group felt strongly as well, that it's something that should be considered in a master plan. So that connection from Anderson Lane up to the YMCA was looked at here. On Anderson Lane itself, the section shown here shows how you could reduce some of that pretty wide pavement that is out there today in that corridor, and put in a divider curb, if you will, and then still use pretty much a shoulder. You'd restripe the lanes and pretty much use the shoulder at that point as a protected bike facility. So you'd have that curb separation from yourself and the traffic, vehicular traffic, and then that we feel that just blends nicely into kind of running up to the YMCA, which again was something we heard several times during the process. Second sort of pilot project was looking at the Sam Ralston Trailhead and adding a few amenities to that. So public restroom facilities, for example, you have some public art there already, maybe incorporating some of the big 4 sort of features that you see throughout the downtown, whether that be bike racks or the paver nodes, having a stronger crossing on Sam Ralston, for example. So just incorporating all that and figuring out how to keep parking there and making that a little bit safer as well in the process. So those are our concept for the Sam Ralston Trailhead improvements. Another implementation project that's ongoing, and we kind of lump this into into what we do as well, just because of the placemaking efforts that the plans have on cities and towns. So, your CSX Art Initiative and painting the murals on there. So those kind of correlate with some of the bike routes as well. So, seeing how those kind of correspond and work with, and so we kind of saw that as an implementation project from this as well. So that's why you're seeing that here. Lastly, design standards. So I mentioned kind of that Big Four Trail standard at Sam Ralston Trailhead, and bringing in some of those bike racks and benches and your trash receptacles, anything like that, crosswalks, kind of like what you've done on the Next Level Trails project as well. So, the kind of railroad sort of crosswalk pattern that you have in the thermoplastic there on the cross streets, that's a guideline. That's a design guideline that we can pick up on and use throughout the city to kind of create a cohesive look and feel for bike ped facilities. So with that, that's a kind of a quick overview of the 80-page report that we had put together, and between myself and Derek, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for all the work. That's a lot of effort.
Yep, appreciate
job.
it. Yep, no, it's a fun project.
We're going to go ahead and read the resolution.
I believe so. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Resolution 2022-26 is regarding an addendum to the City of Lebanon Comprehensive Plan for the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. Whereas this council has the duty and authority to review, amend, and approve amendments to the City of Lebanon Comprehensive Plan adopted and certified by the Lebanon Advisory Plan Commission. Whereas the Lebanon Advisory Plan Commission held a public hearing on October 17, 2022 for docket number 22-66 titled Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan as required by law. Whereas the Lebanon Advisory Plan Commission has found the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan to be in accordance with the promotion of public health, safety, morals, convenience, order, and general welfare for the sake of efficiency and economy in the process of the development of the community, and is certified to this council its adoption by a vote of 7-0 in favor of it. Now therefore be it resolved and adopted by this council that the council hereby adopts the amendments to the City of Lebanon Comprehensive Plan as evidenced by Exhibit A attached hereto and incorporated by reference. The Department of Planning and Zoning is ordered to amend the comprehensive plan to conform to these amendments, and all acts done to create and implement this amendment to the comprehensive plan are hereby ratified. This resolution shall be in full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Any questions, comments from council?
No, sir.
Any from public? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion, we approve resolution 2022-26.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's been approved.
All right, thank you, council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last item on the agenda will be the Lebanon Utilities Memorandum of Understanding with the IEDC, Lebanon Utilities.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. My name, for the record, is Jeff Jacob. I'm the attorney for Lebanon Utilities. I'm here with Ed Basquill, its general manager. And we're here tonight with somewhat of a new type of request that we're seeking authorization to move forward with a memorandum of understanding between the Indiana Economic Development Corporation and Lebanon Utilities for the pre-allocation of water and wastewater capacity. This is a relatively new function that is carved out in the non-recurring fees and charges ordinances that you recently considered and adopted. Typically, when you have capacity that you are seeking to reserve for a subdivision or a commercial development, it is reserved through the platting and permitting process. So once you have a permit or a plat approved, that developer will typically go across the hall or downstairs, and they will purchase that capacity. In this instance, there is an ask to approve that capacity, water and wastewater, before plan approval has occurred. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Suffice it to say, given the size and scope of the proposed Grasslands project, the request has been to allocate that capacity in advance of the planning process. So the action request this evening is to do just that. The IEDC has worked with Lebanon Utilities engineers and carved out 864 MGD of water and 864,000, I may have misspoken, 864,000 MGD of water and 864,000 MGD of wastewater capacity specified for the Grasslands project. Now, there are two documents that have been provided for you this evening. One is a memorandum of understanding outlining the way that pre-reservation with IEDC would work, and that was a document that myself and IEDC and various professionals, including Mr. Basquill, have worked on with IEDC for some time, and we just now have sort of gotten our hands around the end user and began discussions with them relative to their capacity. But to date, our discussions have been with IEDC. The second document is an addendum, and that is a state budget agency form. I was really not permitted to touch that document too terribly much. It is a standardized form, as many of you may see some of the little nitpick issues with it. It is a standardized form, and I was sort of told that the state budget agency likes to see what it likes to see. So that document is a supplement, more of a form process, but I wanted to give you all a flavor of what was going on. So it's important for you all to know that the Lebanon Utility Service Board, which I represent, has reviewed and unanimously recommended the City Council approval and authorization to allocate the capacity as set out in the Memorandum of Understanding. And so that is our ask this evening, is for the City Council's approval, authorizing the Lebanon Utility Service Board through its General Manager Ed Basquill to move forward with the pre-allocation of this capacity specific to the Grasslands project. So I'm happy to answer any questions as well as Ed.
Yeah, Jeff, what is MGD?
Million gallons per day. So it's a good amount. Typically, the way that there's a engineering formula that goes off of what's called an EDU, or equivalent dwelling unit per day. This is backing into that in a more precise way to nail down what the allocation or the capacity request for flow, wastewater, and water intake, or the demand would be.
I thought the state was bringing water down from the Wabash aquifer.
Yeah, great question. And that is a conversation that the mayor and Ed Basquill are involved in. That's a long-term project. As you'll see in the Memorandum of Understanding, we have set out some time periods that we would like to see, if we're going to allocate this capacity, we would like to see the Grasslands project actively moving forward and seeing some zoning approvals and a build-out on the project in the near future. So that's part of the request. There's $21 million in availability fees that they would be paying in approximately 90 days after the agreement. They would also be responsible for running all of the lines to the connection points as set out in the agreement, and that would be expense that would be on the developer or on the state. It would not be on the city or the utility, suffice it to say.
Jeff
And
or
why is
Ed, for folks that may not understand this or be up to speed, can you kind of give a very high-level explanation of what availability fees are and what it is that the Grasslands project is trying to do in terms of reserving capacity within the Lebanon utilities. And the fees that this council passed so that we have the cash available to build that capacity in the future.
Yes, thank you for that question. An availability fee is buying capacity in our system. It's like if you're, for lack of a better analogy, if you had a country club and you were buying a membership in the country club, you'd have your annual dues, which might be like our rates, but the buy-in to the system. It's calculated based off of what capacity is worth in the plant, and we recently raised those fees to $4,600 for water and $4,800 for wastewater, and the developer, that you get that $21 million figure by calculating out their flow based on the number of gallons per EDU. And what that does is that protects the ratepayers, because when new development comes in, they're paying this money and they're paying for the improvements at the plant to serve them. So currently, it's from, just look at my notes, from a water standpoint, there's about, they're using about 56% of our available capacity at the plant. But what we could do is build or purchase additional capacity with the money they're giving us for the availability fees. So it's a growth pays per growth idea so that the ratepayers are protected. And does that answer your question, sir? Is that
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And what's the purpose of doing this before plan?
Well, as I understand it, the IEDC came to us, and these are some discussions that are a little bit above my pay grade, but in order to induce the end user, Eli Lilly, to the project, and I believe that they're seeking to close even yet this month, that the request was to have this capacity so that when they commit to the project, they've committed to the project knowing that they will have the ability, when they flush the toilet and turn on the water, that will be there. So it is a pre-reservation of that. It also, the benefit to the utility in the city is that we've locked down some time periods on when this is going to move forward, and it allows us to do some significantly needed pre-planning for this. Mr. Kincaid, your question about the water issue, that's there's many phases to additional water capacity that's being studied, and this is one step or one, what I would call preliminary phase. So the hope would be, or the plan as I understand it, is that any additional capacity that would be provided would more than make up for what is being allocated here in a much larger construction project down the road.
What would happen if LEAP went away? Just say this. And Lilly had to just draw on Lebanon. Could Lebanon handle all that?
Yes. Yes, we
That's
can.
where that 54% number was.
Correct. So and I want to make sure that I'm referring to, making sure that I'm giving you an absolute accurate figure, but the capacity allocation, or the capacity, or the request is 56% of the available water capacity and 39% of the wastewater capacity.
Okay.
So, and as you're aware, we're in other discussions and actively been studying water and other additional sources. So, you know, and just hearkening back to this utility board, who's been aware of some of this and been studying it for some time, again, very much supports this, and they move forward with approve this with a unanimous recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff, I had a question on, there's, for lack of a better term, this may not be correct, but bailout clauses, I can see for both sides. Is there anything that gives the utility board any concern that we could end up in a position where, for whatever reason, any of these projects go away and we're kind of left?
I don't want to speak for the utility board,
Okay.
But I will share with you that those were some of the concerns that went into drafting this agreement. And the reason that we don't jump at throwing capacity out there too terribly soon. But in this instance, we would have infrastructure that availability fees would have paid for and would have been in the ground, but capacity then not used. So at some juncture, I don't want to speculate, but you would see a user come in as the city would evolve and grow that would take up that infrastructure. And then there would be an additional availability fee. So there's some double protections in there, in addition to the infrastructure commitment that the developer, which is typical, that the developer would pay for the lines and infrastructure needed to connect to the utility systems. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Jeff, I see the Grasslands project says it's, according to the IEDC represents that it will begin seeking the necessary zoning approvals for the Grasslands project on or before June 23rd, with substantial construction to begin on or before December 23rd. And the reason I say that is that should the IDC fail to receive necessary zoning or fail to substantially start construction on or before the dates out above, the IEDC shall notify Lebanon Utilities of the same, and utilities is entitled to rescind the above referenced water supply and wastewater capacity, so.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the important element there, we believe, is is that the substantial construction to begin in by December of 2023. The other elements of this agreement has been around for some time, and there's been some things that have changed, including some ordinances that you approved that changed the structure of these agreements. And so knowing that they've been circulated to a variety of different entities and groups, the June 2023 is not really a concerning date to me. It's the December of 23 that we'd like to see some earth moving and some substantial planning to move the project along. So that's the one that is a trigger for us, and we believe for the city as well. And should it not, again, then we've got the ability to claw back that capacity, and then any funds that we've used in paying for infrastructure from the availability fees would remain and be used for that infrastructure.
Council, have any other questions or comments?
No, sir.
No.
Comments from public?
Yes, I have a question. Is the Grasslands project?
Would you please go to the microphone, state your name? You have about 2 minutes.
My name is Jim Love. My question is the Grasslands project yet another name for the Lily project? Is that what I'm to assume from what I'm hearing? So yet another way to further confuse the public. Just keep that in your mind.
Yeah, just to be clear, that from the inception, and maybe I hope that's not my doing, I didn't mean to confuse anyone. As a matter of fact, the IEDC is not closed with Lilly, is my understanding, and so that, while that's been announced, the formalities of that are not finalized. This has always been, since its inception, before I was aware of any end user, it's been referred to as the Grasslands Project, and that's the name on my files in my office, and the way the utility board has referred to it from its beginning. So apologize if that's caused any confusion. That's on me. So thank you.
I think the Lily project is like the Grasslands project. The overall is the LEAP project.
That's correct. That's correct.
Any other comments? I hear none. I'll entertain a motion to approve the Lebanon Utilities Memorandum of Understanding with the IEDC.
I'll make a motion, we approve the memorandum of understanding with the IEDC.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Been approved.
Thank you for your time this evening. I know this is sort of a new process, and as we will work through this, as we adapt our non-recurring fee ordinances in the future and figure out an efficient way to handle these. So thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Is there any other new business from the council?
No, sir. I make a motion, we pay the claims?
Second.
Moved and seconded to pay claims. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion for adjournment.
So
Make a
moved.
motion, we adjourn.
Okay, so moved.
I think,
All
give that to
I've got it.
okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Welcome.